me. This is another episode of Unpublic in the morning. Glad to see you all. Thank you for joining me. Any morning that we can talk about education is a good morning. So I'm happy to see you all today. In Minnesota, it is snowing. It's April. I don't know if you guys remember the Prince song. Sometimes it snows in April, but in Minnesota, sometimes more often than not, you can have weird weather like we have today. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the big change in public school education that we have experienced over the last year. So now we're into April of 2021. By this time last year, we were starting to wrestle with the fact that we were going to have a different world, that education was going to be different than it had ever been before. But I don't think we knew how long it was going to last, what the big deal was. I think we were more in the crisis mode of getting our kids set up to do something different. You know, there's pictures of me from last year with my kids sitting at the kitchen table, and we've all got our laptops out, and we're all ready to just like take on the challenge. And, you know, a couple of weeks later, kids are in different parts of the house with their laptops, and then it started to settle in that this was somewhat of the new normal. And it was okay for a while, you know, for a long period of time. It was just, hey, we got to do what we got to do. And at some point, there became the realization that the big change in education, the big upset, the big imbalance to our life was going to be for longer than we thought. We enrolled kids in remote learning and just kind of trudged forward, hoping that something would change. We could get a pen or a vaccine and get back to the new normal. Things would go back to normal again. That went on for a while, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. If you're a parent or if you are a guardian, if you have kids and you're having to deal with the educational part of life in ways that were different than you ever did before, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We're in a big change. Something was broken and radically different. And part of that was because of the way that we worked is different also. So we are now working remotely, mostly working from home. And we just don't know how long it is going to be until we have some degree of normalcy in our life again. So we're making the most of it and the best of it. This is what I don't think that was expected for people, that people may have expected when it comes to this big change, like this big upset that we would have never seen. Our own national Hurricane Katrina, the kind of the incident or the event that happens that makes everything different, that changes the way, you know, you live, you work, you shop, you eat, and you learn. But one of the things I don't think that we could have foreseen was, for the very first time, parents would be encountering ways of learning and educational questions that they could not have ever foreseen before. So one of those changes is that things like online learning were good for some kids, and things like remote learning were good for some kids. And this all comes down to choice. It's the moment for choice, because at this moment, we're starting to see parents exercise muscles that they had never exercised before. Maybe they have pods or homeschools, or maybe they're learning from all over the world and they're taking their kids on the road. I've seen a few stories with parents that have went back to their native countries with their kids, and they're learning from there. So I want to talk about this, not just today, but ongoing, about how the moment for choice has kind of come, and we are in it now because, not because people have changed on their policy positions or their ideas, but because the practicality of the big upset, the big change in all of our lives has opened up a world of possibilities of what we might want to do for our kids. I do have a guest today, and it looks like he has joined us. I'm going to see if I could pop him in here. Matt, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Excellent. We got Matt this time. So for people watching who don't know, Matt was supposed to be on the show a week or so ago, and we just had some real terrible technical difficulties. So it sounds like we got him worked out this time. Thank you for I appreciate you joining. Matt has actually has had multiple hats at different times. He writes actually for multiple publications. Has worked with the Koch Institute in the past. Matt, what are you currently doing? Because I know you from Twitter and from all that you're like one of the biggest choice warriors that I know on Twitter. But what's your current project that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm running the something called the Arizona Center for Student Opportunity at the Arizona Charter Schools Association, and I'm also the executive editor of Redefine.
And I'll see if I can find the link for Redefine Ed, because that's where I see a lot of the of articles that you've had published. Did you say you're the editor?
Executive editor, I think.
Executive editor. Oh, so that means that I could get my stuff in there. All right, good. We're gonna have to talk, Matt.
We want you anytime.
Well, here's the reason that I was after getting you on this show for a long time. As in my setup, as I'm saying today, there are many parents nationally who it's the first time that they've had to really exercise the choice muscle because they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. Like, ironically, the government has given you your kids back and said, hey, here, have it, because we can't do anything for you right now. So we're going to shut these schools down. And for the first time in probably 150 years, parents have to actually have cognition about what they do with their kids every day. Like, should it be remote? Should it be hybrid? Should it be, partially in person or in person? Should it be public or private? But you and I have talked just a little bit about this before, and this is why I think you're a great guest to talk to today, is that oftentimes when we talk about charter schools, for instance, we talk about New Orleans. And oftentimes when we talk about integration, we talk about Louisville and Hartford. Like those are there are places that kind of have the system that you can look at if you want to know how a thing works. So integration, look at Kansas City, Hartford, and Louisville to see how it worked out. Look to New Orleans to see what an all charter school network looks like. No one ever says Arizona. Arizona's like that secret desert locale where if you want to see how choice works on a statewide basis, there's this little secret oasis called Arizona. And we never really talk about it. In fact, you are the only person I ever see that kind of lifts it up with data and with policy. Kind of, you have a pointed, I think, kind of idea about the policy. Why is it so? Let's just start there. Why is Arizona this hyper choice market that nobody knows about?
Well, we're a little we're out here in the desert, to the east of California and to the west of Texas and New Mexico. I think that what we have been up to, kind of broadly speaking, became somewhat unfashionable in policy circles, right? It kind of embraced, starting in 1994, a broad system of sort of, and to use the old rhetoric, right, to let 1,000 flowers bloom in terms of choice. I'm originally from Texas, and in Texas, as in most others, I would say there was sort of a pullback from that initial philosophy in the choice movement. But here in Arizona, in 1994, we had a bipartisan group of lawmakers, Republicans and Hispanic Democrats, who did two big things. They passed a very liberal charter school law, and simultaneously, they made it illegal for school districts to charge tuition for open enrollment, and they required school districts to have an open enrollment policy. Now, to this day, district open enrollment policy can be buy a house in this district or go away. That's permitted under the law. But the way things have played out here in Arizona, with a very broad, a very geographically diverse and inclusive charter school sector, and private choice, right? Private choice is sort of the Batman. In combination, these things have created incentives for our suburban districts to participate in open enrollment in big ways. So for instance, Chris, the Scottsdale Unified School District currently has around 22,000 students. 4,000 don't live in the boundaries of Scottsdale Unified, so they're open enrollment students into the district. And when you look around the country, this is very unusual, right? As you know from Twitter, the Fordham people started, threatening to charge me a dime every time I tweet out their map of Ohio, their open enrollment map of Ohio. And then when you look at that map, what you see is they've color coded every school district in Ohio, right? And every large urban district in Ohio is surrounded by suburban districts who choose not to participate in open enrollment, right? Like Columbus looks like a giant donut, right? It's surrounded by these school districts that don't participate in open enrollment. And then if you go out a little further, you see a different shade of school districts that say, yeah, we'll participate in open enrollment, but only with adjacent districts, right? I mean, I don't think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to see what's happening here, right? The suburban districts flat out want the urban kids, right? I mean, you can see this in their behavior. Here in Arizona, every school district, with the exception of a few isolated rural and small school districts, participates in open enrollment. And this has led to a virtuous cycle of improvement. Arizona transitioned from in the early 90s. We were a very small state, probably about half the student enrollment we have today, maybe like 500,000 or so would be a guess I would have for the 1990 to now over 1.2 million students. The world of 1990 in Arizona was predominantly Anglo, majority Anglo students in the K-12 system. Now Arizona is a majority minority state, and we're higher performing today than we were back then in the early 1990s. So we're both bigger, we're more diverse, and we're higher performing. And while, from a research standpoint, we can't, prove that school choice did this, you would literally struggle to put your finger on anything else about Arizona K-12 that is unique, right? Our testing system is pretty normal. Our funding per pupil is pretty low because we have a very large elderly population, a very large student population, not very many people in between paying the taxes. So we kind of rank towards the bottom on spending per pupil. Everything else more or less kind of generic American K-12, except for we have this like incredible amount of choice going on, but it seems to be working out for us.
So you started with, you had, some of the ingredients here. You had a bipartisan agreement that there should be a choice system. So Republicans and Democrats work together. Is that still, is there still that harmony in Soulville between the parties? Is it, is that something that's still going on?
Not currently, no. The last 10 years have been really rough. The Great Recession was very hard on Arizona. And it is building houses and golf courses. And suddenly you couldn't sell your house in state X, Wyoming, whatever, California, Wisconsin. So when the Great Recession hit, there was literally like a 20% instant decline in state revenues. There were a lot of acrimony that came out of that era, right? The tensions in the system are real, but the tensions in the system are not actually like district versus charter or, district versus private schools so much. In reality, the tensions are between high demand schools and low demand schools, right? Because you have both of these things sector, very high demand, very high performing district schools with wait lists, right? But what we haven't seen yet, but we're starting to see signs of, are districts actually starting to replicate their high demand schools, right? And the politics of this is very basic, right? Why don't districts replicate high demand schools? For the same reason they don't like charter schools, right? The lower demand schools see high demand district schools as the same sort of threat that a charter school represents, right? So we do have a lot of tension in the system. Look at, for instance, the Stanford Opportunity Project data. Stanford has linked all state tests across the country, so we can compare, for instance, Minnesota to Arizona or to Connecticut, et cetera, right? And they let you look at countywide data, school level data, okay, district level data, okay, but districts are always the district schools and the charter schools operating in them. They just released about 2 months ago, they released new data that includes the year 2018. So it covers 07 to 2018. Arizona has the highest rate of academic growth of any state in the country for all students, but also the highest rate of academic growth for low-income students. Okay, we have the highest rate.
I'm looking at it here, actually, like in several groups. So it says Arizona is first in all students, first in low-income students, first in middle-high income students, second with Black students, third with Hispanic students, and first with white students. Arizona. No one knows this. This is all secret information.
Yeah, Arizona, right? No one knows it, right? I know.
Wow.
And it's like for like along those lines, Arizona had the highest 8th grade math scores for Black students for, I don't know, 10 years, and NAEP, and
wow.
No one knows about this. Massachusetts edged us out. Okay. And we have a very small African-American community in Arizona, right? Our student body is majority minority, but that's primarily been led by the large expansion in the number of Hispanic students. But yeah, we have 8th grade many years running. And we have, a higher percentage of our Black students are in charter schools, right? Something seems to be going right here. So, yeah, people don't think of Arizona when, when these, but, the goods are there in the NAEP data and the Stanford data. Arizona has not only the highest rate of academic growth for low-income students, it's by a wide margin. So now let me be very careful to kind of what needs to go here. This does not mean that Arizona has high rates of proficiency, right? Our students, Stanford tracks 8th grade through 3rd grade through 8th grade. Our 3rd graders start below, right? We're a low-income state. We're on the border of Mexico. And, we kind of start at the spot you would expect. We don't, we're not a wealthy state. We have a lot of student poverty. We kind of expect our 3rd graders about, where you would expect that place to start you. But it's not about where you start, right? It's about how much progress you make over time. Right? And Arizona has our students learn more while they're in school than any other state in the country. And this is not coincidental, in my opinion, to the fact that we have so much choice at all.
One of the things that I have pointed out when you have talked about Arizona that I think is really different than almost anywhere else is the fact that so many people are taking advantage of, I don't know if that's the right word, but they're using choice, that they become kind of a protective barrier. Like, so anytime someone says, I think we should close all charter schools, you might, anywhere you are in Arizona, you might be talking to somebody who's in a charter school. And it's not seen as kind of like, charter schools are for low income urban kids, for instance. Like in a lot of places, that's what charter schools are seen as. They're just a school for, urban kids, and then because of that, people in outstate don't have to care about charter schools because they don't have one, they're not in one. So it feels fairly brilliant that you have such a cross-section middle class people in charter schools are taking part of choice. But I've been saying that for a long time, Matt, and more recently on Twitter, though, I've bumped into a lot more of the Save Our Schools types from Arizona that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
I didn't know they existed. What's their axe to grind? I mean, you have teachers who are participating in choice, right? Like, so what's happening?
It's really, really strange, Chris. So my oldest son went to a charter school in downtown Phoenix, and he graduated with. I mean, he attended school with the child of a teacher union president. The children of a Democratic gubernatorial campaign, Democratic mayor of Phoenix. A lot of very prominent Democrats, right? And people are participating in these programs, right? It's not just that school. I mean, there's actually a majority of students in Maricopa County, which is the Phoenix metro area, and it's where like 67% of Arizona kids go to school. A majority of students in the Phoenix area are not attending their zone district school. Okay. Mm-hmm. And, if we had a Justice League of school choice, charter schools are Batman and private choice is Robin. And it's school districts are Superman. Okay. Because the Arizona Charter School Association did a study on this about 3, I want to say years ago, maybe 4. And they looked at 9 different school districts in the Phoenix area. And what they found is that open enrollment kids outnumbered charter school kids almost 2 to 1. Okay. So it was like 31% of kids were not attending their zone district schools, but were attending a district school. Another 16% at that time were attending a charter school. Now statewide, that's about 21%. If we throw in, the private school kids, the homeschool kids, et cetera, that gets you over 50%, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone doing that thinks of themselves as a part of the choice coalition, right? Although
I think we might be having some technical difficulties. Yep, I think Matt's having some technical difficulties on his end. He dropped out a little bit. Hopefully he'll log back in. One of the things that he pointed out, and he mentioned that I actually want to talk about, and Tilly says, yes, technology. See, Tilly, Elverum, this is why we can't have nice things. When we talk about remote learning and online learning, what do we do when we've got this crappy rural internet? I don't know where Matt is in the world, if he's out in the desert, but in my area of the world, we pay more for this internet and oftentimes it doesn't work. One of the things he pointed out that I do want to come back to, because I don't think it's something that people talk about enough, is this, there he is, he's back again, is this, this map in Ohio. And Matt does share this a lot with folks, and I don't think people ever really get 100% of what it means. Matt, I was just going back. You had dropped off, so I was going back to your point about this Ohio map, and this is Ohio school districts, and the darker colors are ones that don't accept any open enrollment. Am I reading that right?
That's correct.
And then the lighter colors are ones that do. So these darker colors are clustered around cities, and they don't accept any open enrollment. Why? Because they want to be private public school systems. Is that right? I mean, would that be a fair thing to say?
I interviewed Chad from Fordham about this, and I asked him that very question, and he said, yes, there's no other way to interpret this map. I mean, just look at Columbus, but not just Columbus. All of the major urban areas in Ohio are surrounded by districts that don't participate in open enrollment, right? And I fear that this is not unusual, right? This is actually how most of the country works, right? Like, buy your way into Lakewood, Ohio, or go to school somewhere else, right? I mean, my
look
mother
at this. It
grew
couldn't
up
be
in
any
Lakewood,
clearer,
Ohio,
though.
outside Cleveland. What's
Yeah,
that?
like so I'm looking at it, it couldn't even be more clear because there's Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati,
Yep.
Toledo up here. So these are your major cities in the state, and the suburbs around all of those urban school districts are basically kind of like closed door.
Right.
No, we don't. So this idea that public education without choice, it's really ironic because when people talk about school choice, they talk about it being selective and it choosing its students, and they don't take all comers. And I'm
Right.
glad that you brought this map up again, because I might have to start paying Fordham royalties on the map, because it's so visual, right in your face, that no, public schools don't take all comers in most
Absolutely.
states.
Anybody that
They
says
don't.
that they take all public schools take everyone, they should have this map tattooed to their forehead so they can look at it in the mirror every day and remind themselves that they're not telling the truth, right? The public school system, as its baseline, starts with a gigantic amount of economic segregation, right? How do you get into those suburban school districts around Columbus? You buy your way in, right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't need to be that way. And so one of the kind of standing jokes I have, Chris, is to tweet out a blank line map of Arizona, right? All it is just the outline of Arizona, and say, oh, look, I've also color coded all the districts by open enrollment status in Arizona. And they're the ones that don't take open enrollment are also dark blue. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much, right? And let me tell you, I used to live in the Scottsdale district until about 3-4 months ago. I would like to say that we taxpayers in the Scottsdale Unified School District took open enrollment kids because we were deeply concerned about the legacy of economic and racial segregation and the drawing of school district lines. I would like to say that, but I can't say that because I know it's not true. Okay. I know what is true is that there are 22,000 students in the Scottsdale Unified School District, and 4,000 of them are from outside the district, and that there are 9,000 kids that live within the boundaries of Scottsdale Unified and don't send their kids to Scottsdale Unified, right? When there are 9,000 kids doing something else, and something else is usually going to charter schools, going to other districts, going to private schools, okay? If you open up 9,000 seats, apparently 4,000 kids from out of district can come in, right? But here's I actually believe, and I've written this several times, that the key to improvement, and imagine we were like in 2008 and we were going to draft a fantasy football team of states, right? And we're going to say, okay, between now and 2015, we're going to monitor all 6 of these scheduled NAEP exams, right? 4th grade, 8th grade, math, reading, and science. And we're going to draft a team to make the biggest gains, okay? And I want to tell you that Arizona probably would have been like one of the last states taken, right? We would have been that embarrassed kid getting drafted onto the team last, right? And yet somehow, right, Arizona goes on to lead the nation in academic gains. Okay. This is not about how much money we have to spend per pupil. It's not, there's in any given state, there's like unknown factors that shape, student academic outcomes. But we did this, and the elephant in the room is school choice. So, I think that the key to, in my opinion, the key to everything is unlocking those suburban districts, right? If you can unlock the suburbs, and by unlock them, I basically mean structure the incentives in such a way that they actually want to participate in open enrollment, that has a number of positive effects on student achievement and a positive feedback loop back into the charter sector, right? This a problem is that we tend to look at school choice programs in silos, right? Like, what is your charter sector doing? What are you doing on private choice? Maybe we think about open enrollment a little bit, and maybe we don't, and we should, because it's really important in my view. Okay, but what happened in Arizona was that in 2009, or actually 2008, like when the Great Recession hit, I mean, it was rough on the Arizona economy. Okay, as I mentioned earlier. But an upside to it is that it made a lot of property that would have otherwise been unobtainable to charter management organizations suddenly affordable. Okay, and if you had big wait lists and were still able to access capital in the midst of that financial disaster, which is no small feat. Okay, but if you were in that situation where you could still access capital, you were never going to have a better opportunity to expand your offerings and to be able to increase the number of seats that you were offering to wait-listed students. Okay, so that started to unfold, and basically from then to now, we basically doubled the number of charter school students. Okay, but as the charter sector expanded, right, that increased the pressure on the suburban districts to get more and more active in open enrollment, right? And the feedback loop onto this is that when you have thousands of empty seats in suburban districts like Scottsdale, right, and you want to open a charter school in Phoenix, you better bring your A game, right? Because you open that new charter school in Phoenix, everybody wants your enrollment, right? Your resident district, the nearby districts. Scottsdale wants your enrollment. The other charter schools want your enrollment. The private schools want your enrollment. Okay. And so if you don't deliver a form of education that is valued by families, okay, what happens is that you close, and it happens pretty quickly, and it's without mercy. Okay. Like the NACSA ratings, for instance, have always kind of like dinged Arizona's charter school laws in their rankings because they say, oh, well, Arizona gives 15-year charters. Best practice says 5, right? Now, I've asked people many years now, where did this best practice come from? What's it based on? Like,
you mean the 5-year chartering?
The 5-year charter, right?
Yeah.
Because we get 15-year charters, right?
Yeah.
And see, and this is kind of the pullback nationally that we saw from a fairly free will. 15-year charters help you get loans, right? Okay, but what played out here in Arizona was, you may get a 15-year charter, but the average length of existence for a closed charter school, we've had many closed charter schools, is 4 years. Okay.
Well, there you go, Matt. There's your best practice. In 4 years, pretty much whether or not a charter school is going to suck or not.
Yeah, but here's the difference, right? The difference is that in Arizona, families are playing the lead role in deciding which schools they want to support and which ones they don't. Whereas in these model bills, they want public authorities to play that role. Yeah. The problem with that is that what we found around the country is it's very hard administratively to close a charter school, right? The parents don't like it. They protest. School leaders call in favors from state lawmaker friends of theirs and whatnot, right? There are lawsuits and all these kind of things, right? Whereas here in Arizona, the average number of students in those closed charter schools that lasted for 4 years, the last year of operation, 62 students. Okay. So you struggled for 4 years. you did not gain the confidence of Arizona's families. Arizona families decided they have better options, basically. Okay. Maybe they tried you and didn't like you. Maybe they never tried you in the first place. Okay. But whatever happened there, right? You may have gone into this with the best of intentions in opening a school, but you didn't gather the support of the public, and you close quickly and without mercy, right? Boom, you're gone, you're done. Okay. Well, about the same time in 2015, where the NAEP was showing that, oh my gosh, look at this. Like Arizona has made statistically significant gains in all 6 NAEP exams. And we were the only state to do that. Okay. The average state made I think it was a net increase, because some states have significant declines, right? Arizona was 6 for 6, and the average state made an increase. I calculated this out at one point. It was like 1.2, right, between 2009 and 2015. So the rest of the country was basically flatlining. Arizona has this big improvement in performance, and our charter scores are very high on the NAEP, right? Like Arizona's charter schools were educating a majority minority student population. Just, that's our public education system is as a whole. But we were showing average levels of achievement for charter school kids that were comparable to Vermont or New Hampshire or whatever. Right now,
Vermont has like 3 kids of color.
Yes, exactly.
And 2 of them are siblings.
Right.
Like the third one is a cousin. So
exactly.
Well, let me stop there though for a second. Let's just stop there for a second. So first of all, it's a story that people nationally didn't pick up on and don't know. If you went to 100 educational conferences in a year, or talk to 50 journalists in a year, they're going to ask you about many things, but they're not going to ask you about what's up with Arizona. It's just not part of we don't talk about it nationally for some weird reason, because everything that you just said, let's say it's not Arizona. Let's just say someone said, hey, did you know about that state where the kids are having outstanding kind of growth in NAEP at all levels and beating the country and are first with many subgroups and second or third with the others? If someone were to say, do you know what state that is? No one would, no, tell me more. And I bet a lot of people would say Massachusetts. They would probably guess that it was Massachusetts for some reason. Right. So first of all, I think that there is something to be said about why this hasn't been picked up on. But the other thing that I asked you about earlier, when you were cutting out, I was asking you just about the local kind of hater coalition. Like, I can't imagine being able to say what you just said, like we're first in the nation in with several subgroups and second or third with others. And we've had this amazing growth. We have charter, private, and district schools that are of choice, meaning that it's not like one sector beating another sector or anything like that. It's kind of like either you do your job or the families vote with their feet and you don't exist anymore. All of that sounds great. And you still have, I just want to add to the screen here. You still have the same crew that we all have. Yeah. Every state has this crew. I swear this is almost like a template. This group of in this one, it's Save Our Schools Arizona. And you could just take Arizona off of there and it could be anybody. Save Our Schools Fiji. Save Our Schools Hawaii. Save Our Schools Washington, D.C. or whatever. And it's the same 4 people all the time with the same T-shirt and the same look in their face, like, literature. Look at the literature in her hand. They're trying to destroy our schools by giving families the opportunity to decide what's best with their kids. How does this play out in Arizona, one of the states where you guys are having success across classes of families, right? In Minnesota, this would be easier to do because middle class families aren't really invested in choice, because we have a very good choice system in terms of if you can get a mortgage in a good area of Minnesota, then you don't need choice, right? That's our system of choice, right? So this plays out really well for us because all you have to do is go to the rich suburbs and tell people they're trying to destroy your schools, and it really works. Right. But help me out with Arizona. What's up with you guys?
I mean, I hate to tell this to the rest of the country, but this is sort of the reward that awaits you for success. So I mentioned earlier that the real tension in Arizona is between low demand and high demand schools, not between districts and charters. not between districts and private schools. The one of the results of so many students moving around, right, is that we have individual schools and individual districts, some of which have done very well on this system, and others of which that are, they have less enrollment, right? We have many district schools in Arizona that are well below their design capacity for the number of students they have. And the problem with this is it's while the benefits of a liberal and pluralistic system that we have here are very apparent, right? And they're kind of like, in my opinion, hard to deny. There is another point of view, right, that is far more focused on the institutions than the actual students that go to those institutions, and they feel aggrieved, right? And this really goes back to the Great Recession, because it was a very, very hard time for public education in Arizona, and charter schools included. Everyone got their per pupil funding cut, including charters. But the other thing that happened is that for the first time in the state's history, at least since World War II, all of a sudden enrollment growth just got cut off, right? And so you can't sell your house in Wisconsin. You don't move to Arizona. Enrollment growth kind of like plateaus for a long time. And there's this very large surge in charter school enrollment. And that triggers, a more active system of open enrollment, which some people do very well with and some people don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the very things that led to this in my opinion, this very large surge in academic improvement are also resented by segments of our population, which have now become politically organized. And they are, unfortunately, behaving in a very reactionary way, right? It wasn't long ago, this legislative session that is still ongoing, Chris, that I sat there and watched people argue that Governor Ducey has proposed a system of small grants to low-income families to help with their transportation costs while they're using open enrollment in charter schools. Okay. Now, I literally have seen multiple people try to claim that giving transportation grants to low-income families would increase segregation. Okay. No, but wait, it gets better. It gets better.
Oh, God.
Every charter school in Arizona since the very beginning has always been required to hold an enrollment lottery, right? The law actually says you have to use a random process when, the number of applications exceeds the number of seats. Okay. But remember what I told you earlier, the number of open enrollment kids exceeds the number of charter school kids in the Phoenix area 2-1. Okay. So like a third of our kids are using open enrollment. The state
and when you say that, you mean they're using open enrollment to enroll in a district that's outside of their home district?
No, to enroll in a district school that is not their zoned district school,
not their assigned school. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So like they're moving around. Okay, but it's almost a third of students here in Phoenix. Okay, so it's very active. Okay, the state does not have a requirement for district schools to use an enrollment lottery for open enrollment. Now, a lot of them do, okay, to give them credit, but some of them don't, okay? Every year, right around this time of the Super Bowl, there's a high school in Phoenix called Sunny Slope, and there's always news stories about it because the parents are camping out over the weekend in a park next to Sunny Slope. Okay. And this is presented as, hey, wow, look how neat. These kids, they got their tents. They're camping out spot in line to go to Sunny Slope. Okay. And of course, people who spend more time thinking about this kind of stuff are like, that's an equity disaster right there. That's what that is, right? In fact, people have hired people to camp out for them to get their place in line to get. Okay. Now, from my point of view, where we want to get right in society is a place where, hey man, if Sunny Slope is doing something good and there's more demand for Sunny Slope than seats at Sunny Slope, why don't you build a second Sunny Slope? Right? We're not there yet. Okay.
Well, wait a second now. What is the answer to that question? That seems obvious. Why wouldn't you build a I mean, look at this. This is ridiculous. I'm looking at this picture here with parents in literal. This looks like what people do at Best Buy for Black Friday. You know,
right.
Like they want a TV. Yeah, they want a big TV, so they're gonna like sit outside. For parents camp out for 36 hours to register for top-ranked Sunny Slope High School.
Right.
This is amazing. So the obvious question, well, tell me, Matt, why wouldn't you just open a, Sunny Slope Part 2 or, something?
Sunny Slope Part 2 because the other schools in the district are threatened by a second Sunny Slope. Okay.
Oh, Jesus.
If you are a district school in the same district as Sunny Slope and you're maybe at 60% capacity or something, the last thing you want is another Sunny Slope, right? And this is why it doesn't happen. This is like political science 101, right? Is like organized interests pursue their goals and their interests, right? So until recently, no one would even thought about creating a Sunny Slope 2.
Okay, so let's just stop there for a second, because what you just said, I mean, first of all, this blows my mind. I have heard about, and I think I saw this once before and thought of it as kind of like a too weird story to come back to, because our district would love to have a school that was that popular, and they for sure would build another building. They would just like bond out and build another building, and we would have Sunny Slope 2 and 3 and 4, however many, we could get.
No, Chris, don't be too sure about that, because I'm telling you, the other schools in the district would see that threatening, right? If Sunny Slope tripled,
oh my God.
Like it's that basic. It's that basic. Okay.
When you say that it's like poli-sci 101, right? Interest aligned. The interest in failing so the losers of district losers and school public education losers then are the main interest that are organizing against new opportunity, new choices, new and it's because kind of, if I'm following your logic of what you're saying, it actually just makes sense. It's logical that their interest is in schools that don't do well, so they have to react politically to these things.
Yeah,
but I'm still stymied by the idea that you could publicly, openly say something like, for instance, let's just say this: governor says we want to give low-income families transportation to get to an option that they want to get to, that they themselves want, right? So this is just like, this is like kind of me and my relationship with my Lord, me and my God. And you want to get in between me and my Lord and say, no, we don't think you should have that, because the choice that you might make is a choice we don't like.
Yes.
That's so crazy.
Okay, so but the punchline here is even worse than the transportation one. Okay? So you got the annual Sunny Slope Campathon, okay? And this is on the news every year. COVID kind of interrupted it, but unless we pass an open enrollment lottery requirement, like it'll keep going, because they view it as good publicity. Okay, I guess I don't understand any other reason to do it that way. Okay, so there was a bill that passed the Arizona Senate to require an open enrollment lottery. Right, that bill was also described by people as increasing segregation.
Oh, geez.
Okay. You're going to require a random lottery for, so no camp out, right? And you can't pay someone to hold your place in line in a camp out. You have to use a random process, and that's going to, quote, increase segregation. Now, segregation is a word in the Oxford Dictionary, and you can look it up, and it actually has a specific meaning, right? And this doesn't fit, right? Giving everyone an equal shot as a scarce resource is not generally associated with Jim Crow or anything alike, right? I think it's kind of a no-brainer and a basics of being fair. So, I mean,
it really bugs me, Matt. It really bugs me that people whose life is dedicated to educating the public, because that's what public education is, people who go to school for 4 to 6 years and get certifications to literally teach our young people and to help them be better critical thinkers actually participate in really intellectually insulting public arguments involving things like segregation, for instance. Segregation, as you were just saying, this is what made me want to stop here for a second. What you were just saying is really important to point out. Segregation is a term of art, especially in education. And segregation is the state government, endorsed state government, assigning you to inferior schools on the basis of race or an immutable characteristic. That is actually, in tradition, that is what segregation is. To have an educated person who is paid by the state to educate young people tell you that you're choosing a school when you're a historically marginalized population, choosing a school not based on race, but based on your family interests is the same thing as state-sanctioned segregation, is abuse. It's an intellectual abuse of the public trust. Anyone paid by the state to educate people should be fired for making that argument. But they have to, number one, they either have to know better and they're just being clever with their words and political, which is its own offense and its own sense, or they have to actually be ignorant to the actual definition of what segregation is. And again, they shouldn't be teaching young people if that's the case. I don't know if you'll go that far. I will.
There's some of both. Unfortunately, there are, I believe, cynics who believe that know better than to believe the nonsense that they're saying. There are also people that just don't understand it. I mean, there's everything you said was 100% correct. There's de jure and de facto segregation in schools. Just look at that map of Ohio. Okay. You tell me that Ohio doesn't have a segregated school system, right? Now, does Ohio have a law that says, Black children are not allowed to attend suburban Columbus schools? No, they don't have a law that says that. They have a law that says, we have attendance boundaries based on zip code. And and people are arrested, right, for like giving false addresses and things like that in Ohio. And there's been several celebrated, infamous, I should say, cases about that.
Imagine a charter school doing that. Imagine this, Matthew, because nationally, school districts hire private detectives to follow parents home. I don't think the public knows a lot about this, but they literally not just follow you home. In some cases, they have demanded to come in your house, and they're not police officers, but they've demanded to come in your house and have actually demanded that parents show them the bedroom of the child to prove that the child lives there. Right. Imagine charter schools or private schools nationally hiring private detectives to track parents home and demand to see the bedroom of their children.
Oh, yeah. And yet, people like me and you, we're the segregationists.
Yeah, right? We're the segregationists, right?
But we're segregationists. Okay, right? I honestly do think that there are a lot of people though that honestly don't understand this, and within their framework of their worldview, like they've gotten lost, right? Like this seems so obvious, right? It is obvious, right? You're sitting there watching a Sunny Slope camp out, and you want to call, as a Sunny Slope camp out, by the way, that is predominantly populated by upper middle class white people, by the way, right? And you want to hold on to that system and defend it and be against an open enrollment lottery and call it segregation. I mean, there's just not enough people in the world that are malicious enough. There are people, but not everyone that is. It reminds me of the Baldwin letter to his nephew, where he explains just how deeply misguided people are, right? How there's a whole history that they don't even know, right? And it's sad, and I don't know what to do about it exactly, other than to keep pressing the facts, right?
You do a really good job of that, and you're good natured about it. You don't you don't take on my Twitter persona with people. You like remain good natured about it. It's hard for me, really honestly hard for me to remain good natured about it specifically because the fallout of every kid not finding a humane education and their seat in the place where they're supposed to be, the fallout from that is just like wasted human potential across large subgroups of people. Yeah. And I don't mean, when I say subgroups too, I want to be very clear about this. Like, this isn't an urban, black, white, brown problem or whatever. Every kid in America deserves a humane education. And by humane, I mean one that is fitting to their purpose in life, their needs, what they find personally meaningful. Are they an artist? Are they a doctor? Are they a landscaper? Are they somebody that has something innate in them that they won't have that part of them actualized if you just assign them to just any school because you want to arbitrarily. And I don't think that the government should have, we are a government that is supposed to govern on the consent of the governed. To me, it's a little bit ethically challenged to think of the fact that you get to generate who is the ones who are going to give you consent in the future. So having a monopoly on education and a monopoly on violence and a monopoly on things that, whatever, to me, they all work together to create a compliant, dumbed down populace that haven't been self-actualized. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, if you have millions of people who have not been self-actualized, they've been given a common dumbed down curriculum that isn't at all personally meaningful to them. The number of people that never read a book again after high school is huge. The number of Americans that never, ever again read they've had such a bad experience in the government schooling system. So anyways, what I started saying there to me is the part that it's hard to be kind of not get passionate about it with people, because that the outcome is millions of people not finding a humane education, one that's personally fitting to them. So we as choice people, we're segregationists, Matt. We are, we want to destroy public education, destroy the public schools. Do you wake up in the morning, Matt, just real talk, do you wake up and say, how can I destroy public schools today? Right.
So I've addressed this many times, Chris. The bottom line is that public funding for K-12 education is guaranteed in every single state constitution. It is very strongly supported by the public. And if that were my goal, if I were actually Dr. Evil and I would wake up in the morning going, how can I destroy public education? I'd be the most frustrated man in the world, right? And like, I sit here and I celebrate the success and improvement of public education in Arizona and Florida and other places, right? I'm fully, look, there's nothing I could do, even if I wanted to, and I don't. Right. But even if I wanted to, I couldn't change, So public education is about the safest institution in American public life. Right. And it is totally safe from me. Right. If I were out to destroy it, I would have no chance to do so. And I'm not actually. And then secondly, man, if I'm out to destroy Arizona public education, then what am I trying to do? Am I trying to improve it to death? What's going on? Right? Like does having the highest rate of academic.
I think you're freezing up again, but that is hilarious. Death by improvement. Let's kill the public schools by making sure that parents find more and better ways to operate within the existing current school system. Matt, I think you're freezing again, and we're coming up on time. So this is what I want to do. Definitely want to say that we have to have Matthew back so that we can dig even a little bit deeper into the numbers. I think today we talked about more of the surface of the choice issue within Arizona. And there's a lot, I think, to peel back just in the numbers and do the numbers make sense. If you want to find Matt, you can find him online. Just search for him on Google. I'm sorry, not Google, on Twitter, and you will find a Matthew Ladner. He edits Redefined Ed as one of his gigs, and he actually on Twitter is one of, I think, the better kind of more level-headed, reasonable, choice advocates, who's not fire breathing and not insulting people or trying to destroy schools or anything, doing his level best to have honest and decent conversations because he's an honest and decent person. I myself find it very hard to interact with the haters without having a very Catholic and stern response to them about what is and what is not true when we talk about public school education. As always, I apologize for the internet and for the technical difficulties that we had today. We had a few yesterday also, but we are working it out. We're always trying to do a better job. If you have any show ideas, please send them to me. You can email me at citizen@hey.com. Excuse me, and hey is just HEY.com. If you have any critiques, things that you think we should talk about in the future, let's do it. If you really want to help the show, we want to grow. I wanted to grow the show steadily and kind of slowly. So please like it and share with others, and make sure if you know anybody who would benefit from this conversation or even might be a good guest, please suggest them to me. And let's always remember this. The bottom line is the reason that we do this every day, at least I don't know what your reason is. This is my reason. The bottom line for me is that I really, really do believe that every child is born with unsurpassable worth granted to them by a mighty God. And it is my job every single day to live with that as my mission, to think that through every day in the work that I do. I'm an education activist. I'm an education advocate. That's the role that I've taken on in life. And maybe that's not the role you've taken on, but you are a person, I believe, who loves children and loves humanity, and you want the best for them. To me, the best for them is making sure that they get a humane education. A humane education is within their growing years, they find the learning opportunities that help them self-actualize to the point where they reach their highest God-given potential. And that is not happening right now. Millions of kids right now are forcefully assigned to schools that will never help them reach their highest potential. And as a rally cry, school choice is not about a school system, and it's not about a philosophy of education. It is about making sure that you get every American child, there's 30 million of them or more, to a seat where they can get a humane education. It might take place in their living room, might take place in their backyard or on their farm. It might take place in a school, might take place in Montessori or Waldorf. It might take place in their assigned neighborhood district school. But the job is really to get kids to that place where it's about them, where it is child-centric and you really work on them. It is not about system-centric behavior, always focusing on save our schools. No, let's not save our schools. Let's save our kids. Let's do it together. Thank you as always for sharing this time with me. I